Well, Happy New Year, everybody, and welcome to the January 2021 Crescendo Connect Conversation. My name is Lisa Griebel. I'm president of Crescendo Inc., and I just love seeing all our practitioners on the call. Thank you, everybody, for taking the time to join us today. Before I begin here, I just want to do a quick setting of the context for Crescendo Connect Conversations. The purpose of our conversations is to provide you with an opportunity to learn about how practitioners are building emotional intelligence into their practices. Today, it's my pleasure to welcome Liz Backus as our guest speaker. I've invited Liz to share her experience working in the field of aging and making the connection to emotional intelligence. So as you listen to her presentation today, I'm also going to ask you or encourage you to think about what connections are you hearing or are you seeing as she goes through her presentation. And I want to just let you know that Liz is dedicating her presentation today to all of those who have cared for or lost loved ones during this pandemic. So thank you, Liz. We really appreciate that. Before we get started, I just want to do a quick review of the EQI 2.0 model. So you remember that MHS Multi-Health Systems, who is the publisher of the model, and their definition of emotional intelligence is that it's a set of emotional and social skills that influence the way we perceive and express ourselves, develop and maintain social relationships, cope with challenges, and use emotional information in an effective and meaningful way. If you look at the model, you see that emotional intelligence, of course, is at the core of the model, and it's surrounded by these 15 what we refer to as emotional competencies or EI skills. And these 15 competencies really serve as the building blocks for developing or further enhancing our emotional and social functioning, our overall well-being, as well as our overall performance. So when we do a deeper dive, starting with self-perception, generally speaking, people that have a good understanding of who they are in terms of their strengths and their limitations, so emotional self-awareness, they know directionally where they want to take their lives, self-actualization, and they're confident in their skills and ability. We think that generally speaking, that they would be likely to be able to express themselves in constructive ways. So self-expression and being able to express themselves constructively will contribute to being able to develop and maintain mutually satisfying relationships or interpersonal. But coming back to emotional intelligence and having an understanding of how emotions play out inside of us will contribute to our ability to be able to make better decisions as well as managing our stress. So with emotional intelligence as a backdrop, I am thrilled to welcome and introduce Liz Backus, who is a longtime and forever friend. And Liz has supported me in my work in emotional intelligence for many, many years. A few months ago, Liz reached out to me and offered to share her experience and insights related to emotional intelligence and age-wise caregiving. Besides being my friend, Liz is a communications professional with over 30 years of experience as a writer and editor and a market analyst. And after her mom passed away several years ago, Liz felt a calling to help older adults. She became a professional in-home caregiver with seniors helping seniors, earning certification in dementia care. While completing her master's degree in public relations, Liz became involved with the Village movement, which promotes a cooperative neighbors helping neighbors model that helps older adults age in place in a safe and cost-effective, socially connected way. In 2014, she was a member of a grassroots committee that founded the STL Village, a St. Louis nonprofit that is guided by the Village model. And she continues to provide communications assistance to that organization. Working in the field of aging, Liz has found that understanding the EI competencies is really invaluable in being able to communicate compassionately as a caregiver and also advocate for older adults. Please join me in welcoming Liz Backus as today's Crescendo Connect presenter. Liz?
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for helping to mitigate the technical difficulties of this introduction that we were doing. And being the slide mover person. So I'm so grateful to be here with all of you and the new year, which we've been all eagerly awaiting so that we can move on from the horrible year that we all experienced, but in particular, that was most devastating to elders, their families, and the healthcare providers that have been taking care of them. It has been a horrible loss for our society, for our world. And with vaccines coming online, we all hope that that is going to help turn the tide in this. And it is important to try to remember, at least for me, that prior to this horrible virus, trends for aging were really positive. And people are living longer and things were looking really good for getting older. And so we hope to get back to that again. It's going to take time. We're still really in the deep of it, of the virus. So we want to look forward, and I want to start posing a question to you that is, what age, we're going to be talking about aging. So what age do you think of as old age? And what, if anything, are you not looking forward to in your old age? And if you want to respond in the chat, I'm going to let Lisa try to see if that's going to work. And if so, you're welcome to answer those questions in the chat, comment, or you can just ponder it as we talk here today. And while Lisa's looking at those, I'm going to point out the tree that's in the picture. The tree is Methuselah, is her name. She lives in Northern California. She is a bristlecone pine tree, and she's over 5,000 years old. So, which is very impressive and certainly inspirational for aging, but probably none of us will quite get there. And she does look her age, I have to say. But so Lisa, do you have any chat comments?
We've got a couple of comments here. Sheila says she thinks of 80 as being old age and not looking forward to body parts wearing out or losing memory. Sarah says that old age gets older from my perception every year I have a birthday. So yeah. And Tina says 70, not looking forward to the physical decline. Karen says 80 plus, not looking forward to physical barriers, not able to do the usual things in the usual way. That's for darn sure.
Yeah,
I would, only when Liz and I did our walkthrough last week, I said, old age to me is hitting 103.
Yeah. You know, we have to have goals. It's
Yes.
a goal. And I will say that for me, old age is anything in the 90s, because my mother, my grandmother, and my great grandmother lived into their 90s. And so I figure, I'm going to follow in their footsteps if I'm lucky. And what I'm not looking forward to, all the things that everybody else has said, plus driving, giving up driving, I should say. If that, I'm going to hope that that doesn't happen, but it will be minor at the time, but it's still, even if I have to go get bananas, I want to be able to drive. So, all right, well, let's see what other people have said about what is old age. You want to move the next slide, Lise?
There we go. Do you see? I changed it, Liz. Do you see it?
Oh, no, but I have them all in front of me, but I'm seeing the same slide. So I'm wondering if there, okay, thank you. So when does old age begin is a question that was put to through a survey by U.S. Trust and Bank of America to its members, and they asked it by age group. So they broke the ages into millennials and Gen Xers, et cetera. And the way it averaged out was that millennials said 59 was their old age beginning. Gen Xers said 65. Boomers and the olders said 73 on average. So if you look down at those photos, I picked 4 of my favorite people who happen to be all of those ages. And you can guess who gets to go with what age, but I just use them as representations of that. At any age, we can thrive in what we are good at doing and do new things. So speaking about life expectancy, the CDC back in 2017 showed that in the US, the life expectancy was 76 for males and 81 for females on average. Obviously, it differs by some demographics, for good or for bad and for worse. And our country is certainly not at the top of that list in the world, but we're not the lowest, but we could do better. And then actually in January of 2020, there was the census showed that actually life expectancy had improved by 10% over the previous 3 years. So it was trending up, life expectancy, until of course later in 2020 things started to change. I'm sure we will see that data later. There are more people living to be 100 and plus. Has doubled the number of people from 2019, and again, as of probably early 2020. And adults are staying in the workforce longer because they have better health and they have higher educations. And so all of these sorts of trends were doing better healthcare outcomes, et cetera. And up until this virus hit. So we were doing well with aging. Aging was positive. So Lise, we'll move to the next. So we're going to talk about ageism a bit here, because ageism is directly related to how we look at ourselves as we age, and it affects our health, how we view aging. And so ageism is a prejudice against our own future selves, according to Ashton Applewhite. I like that comment because it really kind of captures things. And she's an aging activist. And the idea is that ageism, or any ism that our culture imparts on us, places limitations on how we view ourselves. And those limitations, again, are ingrained in our culture through our language and just through, the types of stereotypes that are shared and grow into our culture. One of the ways ageism shows itself is in elder speak, in the words and images that we have of being old. And also this idea that aging is an illness rather than a natural part of life. All the different products and drugs and creams and everything else that we market to people to slow down aging, or reverse aging. And another phenomenon in the last, I'd say, 30 some years in particular is age segregated housing. And what I mean by that are that all the senior housing developments that are built around people 50 and older, independent, memory care, etc. And the idea of those obviously is to serve a certain market and to provide a service for people. But the result of people moving into those as much as they have been is that our society has become much more age segregated, more than in the past at any time in our past. And while, again, this can be a good option for people at some point, there are many of us who would hope to stay in the homes and the neighborhoods that we love as long as possible. And there's a loss of multi-generational relationships that can happen. And some places are trying to mitigate that by bringing in younger people to even live in the community or bring them in for mentorship or things like that. But that's just one of the trends that's sort of unfortunate sometimes and could increase this segregation. COVID-19, of course, we know that it's uncovered that older adults are more vulnerable in general, but they obviously been hit the hardest by this. And I think that there seemed to be not a message, but this idea that because older adults or the elderly in particular were most at risk, that somehow this made the illness sort of, I won't want to say acceptable, but just not as scary, because the elderly are known to pneumonia and the flu and things always hit them harder. So I think it just uncovers this idea of how we view older people in our society. It's just a reflection of that. And because they would be at risk of being dispensable, I think we just need to be reflecting on what that means. All right, Lisa. If you go to the next one. There we go, thank you. There's probably a little delay going on here, so sorry about that. So the World Health Organization has determined that social determinants, which is everything that is not what we inherit genetically and non-medical in nature, that these social determinants are 80% of the health outcomes for all of us. And this is just basically what environment do we live in and grow up in. And so it is our connections socially, our access to food, clean air, clean water, so our physical environment. It is our economic situation, our financial situation, just basic resources that we are available to us, and then behaviors that we might learn or take on and affect. So one of these social determinants really that's very important when it comes to older adults and elders is isolation, because it is a natural, it isn't a natural thing, but it is a common thing that happens as we age and we are not connected to our networks through work or our families move away. And so sometimes it just creeps into our lives as we age. And isolation poses health risks because as people spend more time alone, it can lead to, the loneliness can lead to depression. It can lead to people self-isolating. It can lead to people not, taking care of themselves and eating and things like that. And so it's important to know that that's something to really be on the lookout for ourselves and for people we love as they age. So next. Okay. So the movements that are redefining, there we go. So the boomers are leading the way. They have been for the last 20 or more years as we all age to redefine aging through these different organizations that are working on this. And these are just some of them that are popular. They have online platforms, and they share common values, these different movements. And the big one is to flip the view of older adults from being looking at a drain on society and looking at them that way, instead as a valuable untapped resource to our society. And so they do this through advocating for older adults as a social resource, and advocating and promoting the idea of new careers and new chapters, volunteering, mentoring, and this idea of multi-generational relationships. And so it's about tapping the wealth of wisdom and experience of older adults. And so all of these platforms, particularly AARP, used to be about retirement. And now it's about anything but retirement. It's about all the new things that we can do. It's about staying healthy, and it's about, again, living a fuller life and new possibilities, right? And same thing with Encore. Is about tapping the wisdom of older adults, and they offer social fellowships for older adults to pair them with needs in our society and match them up with younger people to work on problems in our society. And then the Village movement is about helping people stay in their own homes, and as long as possible through that helping each other kind of model. So these are all, again, really positives for aging, all this energy that's coming out of these organizations. And where this is important, this idea of mitigating ageism and rethinking things, is that when we're caregiving for someone, and I'm focused today on older adults and elders, and this would be our parents, it could be our friends, it could be ourselves, that the messages we give ourselves and the messages we put out to the people we're caring for really matter, because at this time in their life, if we're caring for them, they are in a vulnerable state, and it's important to support them through that by reinforcing positive images and independence for them. So that's why looking at this information about ageism and keeping that in the back of our minds is important in this relationship. All right, so now we're going to talk about the EI competencies. And I can tell you that I have been so thrilled to have some understanding of this through Lisa, because it has been really important in my work. Working with clients and just how I express myself in any relationship that I have. So it has just been a real gift to have this information. So what I've done here is I have pulled some of those competencies, and I should have put them together in a better graphic. They're just kind of in a list here. And I want to emphasize that to build this healthy relationship with your partner, and that's what it is. It needs to be, as best it can be, a healthy partnership when you're caring for somebody. Empathy is the overarching competency that we bring to this. That is the foundation of all the others. And I think empathy is a verb for me. It's not what we feel, it's what we do. And it's the three aspects of that emotional intelligence wise is the idea of recognizing how somebody feels, expressing that we understand how they feel, and then respecting how they feel. And that empathy is really, again, helps all those other competencies. And again, these are just ones that resonated with me, work together, because without the empathy, really, they don't work. And so starting at the top with self-awareness, the way I view this in caregiving is knowing the buttons when you're with someone that may set off negative reactions or may make them uncomfortable. So this is words or things we do when we're caregiving that may just make somebody just not feel safe or comfortable. And it's just inadvertent things, and vice versa when people we're working with may say or do things that make us uncomfortable. And I'm just talking about everyday things, like just if there's a subject that just gets under your skin or gets under their skin, or an activity or something. An easy one to remember is food. If people, that's one thing they control. And if we're trying too hard to manage their diet, that may not be a really, that may be a button that really gets under their skin. And so it's understanding those, and that's an awareness thing as you develop this relationship. And then expressing emotions is something about safety and openness. And so as you build trust and compassion, and through your relationship growing, and that's down the list a little bit in blue there, but that's the whole goal, is the interpersonal relationship. That's the goal of this. As that trust builds, and it takes some time, you should each be able to express yourself openly and safely. And that's just being able to tell somebody, you know, I really don't think I feel comfortable talking about this, or, you know, maybe let's do something a different way. So if somebody hurts your feelings in this relationship, it's okay to let them know that, you know, my feelings were hurt by that. I didn't mean anything, and have that conversation as best you can. And that's important when you're this close to somebody. Independence as a competency, well, it's the thing we all value the most in our life. We've earned it as we age, and it is the thing that as a caregiver, we are trying to support the most in any way that we can. So we're really there to help this person live as independently as they can safely. And so that's just the role of being there. And in terms of doing that, when we get into the decision-making part, the competency of that, that is something that really requires us to this is big and small. There's small decisions every day, and then there's the big picture ones about people's long-term health, et cetera. All of those require us to calmly reassure the person that we are working in their best interest, to try to keep objectivity, particularly when we're dealing, you know, with a parent or someone we're close to. And then, so importantly, to control the impulse to take over for them, to begin to take control away from them. And so that decision making is really where you bring in supportive help. And that I'll get to that in a second, but you should not have to make these decisions all on your own. And so this is something where you need to have a backup, the right people, trusted voices. So stress is involved in these sorts of relationships, of course, and it's important that caregivers have a break and take care of themselves. Flexibility is about problem solving as well, but it's also about just being able to pivot, and if something isn't working, to try something else, to be creative, I guess, is another way of looking at it, in solving your small problems, and sometimes the bigger ones. And then the optimism is just the everyday small things, the small everyday wins, the small everyday joys. Focus on that, because that's what you're going to get. And it's important to just bring one, if it's one a day. You know, we had coffee together and it was good. We enjoyed a TV show we watched together, whatever it is. So these are the ones that resonated with me, and I'm going to tell some tales, some stories of my experiences now that kind of work those competencies in. And the first one is going to be about my mom. So by the way, today is her birth date, and she would have been 105 today. I don't know what she is now. She could be many, many more years than that, wherever she is, but her spirit is always there. So this photo side by side here is just, I love it because it's showing kind of how our relationship evolved as I got older, as we both did. And so there I am at about 5 years of age on the left with my mom's hand behind my back. I'm standing on a chair in our kitchen. I'm assuming my dad's taking our photo. And she's supporting me so I don't fall off the chair, which is, I appreciate that. I have my crooked little smile. The next photo on the right is Mom and I are at a wedding, my niece, and I have my arm around her. I can feel it right now. And what has evolved in this relationship, so very fortunate for, is a friendship between two older women who are having a wonderful time together on this particular day. And so I think it's just, I just love this photo, so I had to show it. So let me get to the caregiving here. So when my mom, first of all, when my mom turned 90, we were all, as I said, very excited because this was such a milestone, and we being my siblings. And so I offered the idea that we put an announcement in her church bulletin that Mom is turning 90 and have a mass said for her, because she was very popular at her church and she loved church. And so we went ahead and decided to do that. We put an announcement in there, and she found out about it that particular Sunday after her birthday. And she said, "Oh, you put an announcement in the church about my birthday?" I said, "Oh yeah, Mom, we just wanted to celebrate your birthday." And she said, "Well, you didn't have to do that." And I said, "Oh, well, we just thought it would, it was really nice. We wanted people to know it's a special time," and whatever I ended up saying. And she said, "Well, that I understand. It's just that now everybody's gonna, hold the door open for me and open my car door for me and do stuff. And, a lot of my friends didn't know. And I was turning 90, but that's okay." And I just took me a minute to realize that while we were just all excited about this, it wasn't that she wasn't proud of herself for being 90. I think she just figured, she didn't really necessarily want it broadcast to the whole church. And we took that away from her having the control of that. So that's a little story of the idea of taking control. We could have asked if she would be okay with that. And it was just a lesson for me in that regard. As she was 93, in the spring of that year, just suddenly she started to decline and her kidney started to fail, and everything happened really quickly. And she was still living in her home, 3-story house. She was still driving and everything, but she was getting tired, and she ended up in the hospital. And I flew up. The three of us adult children were living away, and I flew up there, and she had to go on dialysis. And so I kind of took over kind of managing her care and finding a place for her to go after she was discharged from the hospital, because after 10 days they said, "Well, it's time for you to, go to rehab." And the first time in her adult life I really had ever seen her so vulnerable. And so we got to the nursing home rehab, and we were in the room with the social worker, and they were doing intake with my mom, and I was there. And the social worker was asking a series of questions to my mother, as they should, directed to her, about her day-to-day life. What, are you able to do this? And just got to the question about her hearing. And so the social worker asked about how her hearing was. And I jumped in and said, "Oh, it's not very good." or something even stronger than that. I may have said it's really bad. Just came out, and there was a little second or couple seconds of silence, and my mom looked at me and said, "Well, I'm not deaf." And she was right. She was not. And at that moment, I understood that I just took away her control. It was all about me and my frustration, in terms of, going over to visit and the TV being turned up and everything. And so I just took that away from her, when really she was managing her hearing just fine in her home, the way that worked for her. And so I'm using this as this idea of, when we're supporting people, it's this very common and easy to happen, right? Because we are around these things, but at the same time, it's just another reminder to sort of, the questions are being directed to my mother. And so I learned something from that. And so as an advocate, which is what I was there to be, it's just important to keep that in mind and be careful about when it's appropriate to talk for them. And the other thing too, though, is that as we're trying to support people to live independently, we shouldn't expect people to be self-sufficient and optimistic all the time. And so we have to be honest about what's really happening there. But yeah, so that was one lesson. And I carried that with me into when I started working with other people, to try to just let things play out a little bit before I give the information. So Lise, I've got my next lesson. And the next one is about, I call it being in the moment. And this is about when I was working with people who were beginning to experience memory loss or dementia. And so the pictures of some of my coworkers, and we were at a little event that we had. And one of my, I worked with several people over my time, and usually the course was that we would come in when things were just starting to look a little bit like, something was going on, and then it would progress. And in the case of one of my clients, her name was Norma, and her daughter had come to visit. She didn't have any family in town, and she was in her 80s, living on her own, and her daughter came to visit and noticed she wasn't eating much. And so we were hired to kind of, as companions, to come in and have meals with her and cook and just keep her company. And people like to have company when they eat sometimes, and most of the time. And so at first, she was the friendliest person. You can imagine having somebody come into your home that you've never met. I remember the first time I met her, and she let me right in, and she was so excited to have company, I could tell. So that was very positive. As time went on, and she was getting more forgetful, we were hired to, more hours to come in and spend time with her. And I noticed that, she was getting increasingly anxious, and she was fearful. And so we would adjust the meds and things, but I had to figure out how to redirect her when this was happening. And it was something I had to learn through information. What is it that's setting her off, or the triggers, and then what makes her feel more comfortable and safe. And Norma was a very artistic and loved making crafts, and she used to go to craft fairs, and one of her talents was knitting. And I knew that she hadn't been knitting for quite a while. But one day when one of these episodes was happening, I was able to get her to focus on her yarn. She had an entire room full of yarn skeins. It was unbelievable. And so we were talking, I was asking her about them. And then I said, well, what she was asking me about knitting. I said, well, I don't know how to knit. And she just said, oh, well, everybody should know how to knit. And I said, well, do you think you could teach me to knit? And she said, well, I don't know, maybe we could try. And so we now had something we could do together that made her feel confident, that was in her world, and that made her feel good, and it gave us something to do. And so she taught me to knit. Every time I came, we'd work on it for about a half an hour, usually in the afternoon when I knew things were going to get a little dicey with her being tired and maybe moody and so forth. And so, and it worked for a really long time. I mean, I never learned to knit, but I had the same, little piece of scarf that we kept working on over and over. And the other thing that was important in this situation is that to get information and support, we brought, her brother was a doctor, a heart doctor. So we could call on her brother, literally call him, the daughter, and then a neighbor that she had that she was close to, as sort of a way to build a community of trust. So she knew that if we knew these people, then we must be okay too. If we were in contact with these people, then we could be trusted too. And so this is about finding those trusted supporters in building a network that you can call upon during some of these sorts of times. So, and then I've got, I was going to give one more information, then we'll go on to the last thing. So the Alzheimer's Association, of course, is the best resource ever for learning about working with people that are going through dementia. And one of their communication models is they call it TALK. It's just an acronym TALK, which is take it slow, ask simple questions, limit reality checks. And what what that means, I'm sure, it's when they're questioning something and you correct them. There's times where that's appropriate and times where it's not going to help and it's going to make things worse. And that's something you learn. And then keep eye contact. So, so just those little things, those behavioral things that you learn to do. And they were an amazing resource and they're a wonderful organization. All right, Lisa. And I'm going to talk about the village people. The other village people. So I'm connected with an organization called STL Village, and they're based on a model for helping people stay in their homes, stay put if they would like in their neighborhoods. And the way it works is that people form an organization, they become members, and they help each other do tasks and take each other to the doctor, and people that don't drive, people that drive help the people that don't drive. And so there's doing small household tasks, changing a light bulb, things like that. They also bring in volunteers who are from outside the organization, so younger people, college students, and even we're now a United Way agency, or in the United Way, I should say, as an agency. So we get older volunteers in the community that want to come and help. There's a social aspect to it. So the members organize their own events, and then they invite people, and then they are engaged in the community doing good works. So they have been working on a community garden in an underserved neighborhood, for example, and I got to go see that firsthand, and it was just the most awesome thing to see, cleaning it up and just being a part of that. And and this model started in 2010, and there's about 200 of these organizations all over the country, and they're all grassroots. They're all just people saying, oh, I heard about this village thing, let's try to do this. And so they're all different. And they all, but they're all based on this neighbors helping neighbors model. And so healthy aging. So it says, what does healthy aging look like? It looks like these people, and it is social connection, it's purpose, and it's optimism. Now the optimism is realistic optimism. It's celebrating when you can, but being honest and sharing with each other about the real crap that happens when you're old, like aches, pains, and worse. So there is a lot of connection between those people and empathy. And so I've just been really thrilled to be a part of them. And so I look at this as a model because I personally would like to stay in my own home, whatever that might be, forever, as long as I can. So I like this idea of having this model out there. So might start one myself, depending on where I end up. So with that, all that good information, I have one last question, and we'll open it up for some conversation. And that is about flipping the question. The first question that we talked about was, what do you not look forward to as you age? And now I'd like to put out the question of, what do you look forward to as you age? And I have another Ashton Applewhite quote, because I like Ashton Applewhite. And she says, aging is not a problem to be fixed or a disease to be cured. It's a natural, powerful, lifelong process that unites us all, which I think is the just best, beautiful way to think of it. So I would like to have people, either, chat or unmute and put out there what questions you would have, and then what do you look forward to as you age?
Well, I have to share with you a note that it's in our chat. It's from Sarah. And I just think this is so great. She said, I heard there was someone recently who lived to be 103. And when she was asked what one of the best things about being that age was, she replied, no peer pressure. That's fabulous. I really like that.
I love it. Yes.
Yeah. Liz, this has been a really great presentation. Thank you so much for doing this. I think we all really appreciate the work that you've done with aging adults, and certainly are grateful for the insights and information that you shared. And I am going to open it up now. If anybody has any questions, just unmute yourself and ask it, or you can certainly put something in the chat box and I'll keep an eye on it. But I have a couple of observations, and one is just going back to the MHS and EQI stuff that we're all familiar with. One thing that I remember in our training is we talk about age in relation to emotional intelligence. And MHS did studies around this, and they were able to identify that I think it was in the age 60 plus had the highest scores on the EQI typically. And but what they were able to determine is that it starts leveling off. The EQ scores start leveling off at around 65 and going into the 70s, and then they start coming down. And that was something that I remember being really curious about. And then you think about, generally speaking, around 65, 67, 68, people start retiring. They don't have the same kind of responsibilities. Could be some health issues that they're dealing with. Going back to Liz's comment about the isolation and some of the depression that happens. And I'm relating this to because I remember going through this with my mom. I mean, my mom was 96 when she passed away, but I could see that as she got older, her independence, just look at her daughter in terms of independence. So I learned everything I know from her. But, she started losing the independence. She had to give up driving. And so she had to rely on other people to do stuff for her. And that was just really annoying. And then she got very stressed, so I could just see this decline in those EI competencies. And so that was one thing that I wanted to mention. And then the other thing that Liz and I talked about last week was the impact that the pandemic is having. Liz did a nice job, just talking about the impact on the aging community. And what I was struck by was, here we are forced to shelter in place. We're almost coming up on a year when we've had to stay distance from family and friends, and, the social distancing and small gatherings and all of that kind of stuff. And I just thought this was a tremendous learning for me to think about, if we're getting agitated and antsy because we want to break out of this crazy pandemic, imagine what people are feeling that are in care facilities, and how scared they must be. And, it gives me a different perspective on all of this. And so I'm just really grateful, Liz, that you were able to share some of your insights today with the group. Do we have any questions, or anybody want to chime in and share insights? Go ahead, Sheila. Thank you.
Well, Liz, I just want to say thank you. The work really speaks to me. It's been a little over a year since my mother-in-law passed, but for 2 years, caring for her was an absolute privilege. And I think what occurred to me as you were talking, especially as you reviewed the talk model, was that even though there are well-intentioned staff in progressive senior communities, that element of reality checking can be absolutely maddening for someone with memory loss or dementia, to have a care aide say, hey, remember, or no, remember that happened yesterday, and they don't remember. And so rather than redirecting the conversation, it can create confusion or frustration, or sometimes even what seems like an agitation, because they don't remember, and this person trying to help them is basically saying, you're wrong and you didn't remember correctly. And they're not trying to be, well, I can only speak for the conversations that I had with her, but she wasn't trying to be difficult. She would never try to be difficult. So to have a care provider challenge her as though she were trying to be difficult just really caught her off guard, and she never quite knew how to respond to that. And so as family, learning that and helping create additional awareness with care providers that you can't ask someone who's in a memory care facility why they didn't remember something. Like it defies logic. But anyhow, that talk model, I think, could be very beneficial. And I think even using EQI in training staff or training village members could be very beneficial.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I've worked in facilities. A lot of times we are brought in to just be the eyes and ears, even though they're paying a lot of money to have their loved one in this place, and there's plenty of people there. They need someone to be their advocate, and that's the kind of thing that we would be kind of explaining to those when we see those situations. So it's very common because the training, isn't always there for those specific things. And it's, they're under a lot of stress, of course, too. And it's hard, but yeah, it's really just training someone in just a different way of thinking, and just the idea, all you're trying to do is help this person have a good day. And it isn't really, something that, again, that she probably meant to do on purpose, but it is about training. So yeah, but it's hard to see that with your loved one, because you want them to be comfortable. So I feel for that, for sure.
Thanks, Sheila. I think that's those are really valuable comments, and thank you for sharing about your mother-in-law. Anybody else want to chime in?
Hey, Lisa.
Hey, how are you, Sue?
I'm good. I'm good. Liz, thank you so much. This was very helpful. I moved in with my father 5 years ago, and he just turned 100 last year. So this information is incredibly helpful. Some of it is reinforcing what I'm doing, and I'm feeling pretty good about a lot of the stuff that I'm doing. A couple issues are the patience and the taking away of control.
Yeah.
I struggle. So I'm working on those. So that was really helpful for you to reinforce how important, especially the control issue is, because the obviously the driving has been gone for a number of years, and the walking, the rollator is in use. So there's I think a issue about how independent you feel when you're having to be walking behind a rollator. So I just wanted to thank you for sharing what you did, and I realize the importance of I guess the being here so that he's not isolated.
Right.
Mhm. Yes, yes. And really, in those daily little, struggles of will, or just, the emotions that happen, humor is very important, I think, to just sort of recognize how we're feeling and lighten it up, and just, find the things that you enjoy to do and keep doing them. But at the same time, you're there to help him keep, being as independent, but also safely. And so you do have to, there are things that you're there to take care of.
Right.
So yeah, it's a balance.
Well, the one thing that has happened that I'm really delighted about is you're talking about finding the joy. We've got a 100-year-old teaching a 70-year-old how to play chess. We just
All
started.
right.
Yeah, we saw the Queen's Gambit, and then the other
Oh yeah.
we watched Bobby Fischer. And so my dad's played for years, but I'm just new to it. So this has really been fun. So
you're getting some neuron growth going on too.
I sure hope so. Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
great,
again,
Sue. Nice to meet you.
thank you.
Well, it looks like we've hit our time here. So I'm gonna put a wrap on this. Liz and I will stay on the call for a few more minutes, but I know people have 1 o'clock meetings. A couple things that I just want to share with you is, well, first of all, thank you again, Liz, for the sharing this information. I think it's relevant to all of us. If we're not taking care of somebody now, somebody's going to be taking care of us soon, I think. So thank you for sharing that. I want to mention, of course, that Crescendo Connect Conversations are one of the benefits that we offer to EI practitioners. And our next Crescendo Connect is scheduled for March 23rd, and we're going to be focusing on emotional intelligence and stress management. Kind of a relevant and timely topic, I think. You'll get an announcement about this in the next several weeks. And then as a reminder, if you're making the connection, the EI connection to your practice and are willing to share with our community, let me know, reach out to me directly and we'll figure out how to make it happen. Because it's these kind of conversations that I think just reinforce the fact that emotional intelligence is just such a foundation or a cornerstone to everything that we do. And so I really appreciate the fact that Liz reached out to me and offered to do this presentation for us. I will be sending a follow-up email here with a copy of the recording. And again, please share it with people that you think might benefit from this. And thanks again. We'll look forward to connecting again at our next Crescendo Connect conversation in March. Take good care, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.